So I will now be going over the first question, which is in Chapter 8, the book Fundamentals of Cognitive Science. Thomas Hardy Leahy discusses the three most popular methods used to explore brain processes: positron emission tomography, or PET, magnetic resonance imaging, MRI, and functional MRI, or fMRI. Choose one of these technologies and explain how it works, along with its advantages and its limitations. Hello, this is Module Reflections 3, and I'll be responding to two questions. The first one being, in Chapter 8 of the book Fundamentals of Cognitive Science, Thomas Hardy Leahy discusses the three most popular methods used to explore brain processes: positron emission tomography, or PET, magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI, and functional MRI, or fMRI. Choose one of these technologies and explain how it works, along with its advantages and its limitations. And then the second question being, the embodied cognition paradigm arises as a response to several fundamental principles of classical cognitivism. Identify three ideas that classical cognitivism supports, but that embodied cognition rejects. For each idea, provide an explanation and discuss the reasons the embodied cognition perspective advocates for its rejection. I chose to talk about positron emission tomography, or PET, and this is how it works. PET imaging relies on the injection of a radioactive tracer, typically a form of glucose. Since brain cells consume glucose for energy, areas of high activity metabolize more of the tracer. As the radioactive substance decays, it emits positrons that interact with nearby electrons. These interactions produce gamma rays, which are detailed by the PET scanner. By analyzing the gamma ray emissions, the scanner constructs detailed 3D images showing which areas of the brain are metabolically active. The advantages of PET are functional insight, medical applications, and the complementary role. For functional insight, unlike structural imaging methods such as the standard MRI, PET provides direct information about the brain's metabolic and biochemical activity, making it an excellent tool for studying functional processes. And for the medical application, PET is widely used in detecting abnormalities like cancer, tracking the progression of neurological diseases such as Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, and evaluating conditions like epilepsy. And for the complementary role, it can be combined with other imaging methods, such as an MRI or a CT, to provide a comprehensive view of the brain's structure and function. And finally, the limitations. They are invasiveness, temporal resolution, and the expense and accessibility. So first, the invasiveness. The use of radioactive tracers poses great health risks, particularly with repeated exposure, making it unsuitable for longitudinal studies. And then the temporal resolution. PET cannot provide real-time data about rapid changes in neurological activity, as it takes time to detect changes in the metabolic activity. And finally, the expense and accessibility. PET scanners are expensive to purchase and maintain, and the production of short-lived radioactive tracers requires specialized facilities, limiting the widespread use. Now we'll be going over the second question. The embodied cognition paradigm arises as a response to several fundamental principles of classical cognitivism. Identify three ideas that classical cognitivism supports, but that embodied cognition rejects. For each idea, provide an explanation and discuss the reasons that embodied cognition perspective advocates for its rejection. The three ideas embodied cognition rejects from classical cognitivism that I'll be going over are mind as a disembodied processor, dualistic separation of perception and action, and universality of cognitive processes. The first idea that embodied cognition rejects from classical cognitivism is mind as a disembodied processor. Classical cognitivism treats the brain as an information processing machine, akin to a computer, where cognitivism involves manipulating abstract, context-free symbols according to predefined rules. Embodied cognition rejects that cognition is inherently tied to the body and its interactions with the world. Thinking and understanding are grounded in sensorimotor experiences. For example, abstract concepts like love or time are understood metaphorically through bodily experiences. And they reject this because symbolic representations do not fully capture the complexity of how humans and animals learn, adapt, and think. Research shows that sensorimotor experiences often provide the foundation for mental representations, undermining the idea of abstract, disembodied symbols. The second idea that embodied cognition rejects from classical cognitivism is dualistic separation of perception and action. Classical cognitivism maintains that perception and action are distinct processes, with cognition mediating between the two. This approach assumes that the brain processes sensory inputs into symbolic representations, which are then used to plan and execute motor actions. Embodied cognition rejects that perception and action are fundamentally intertwined, with no clear separation. Cognitive processes emerge directly from real-time interactions between the body and its environment. For instance, catching a ball involves continuous adjustments to sensory input, without relying on abstract intermediary steps. Reasons why they reject it is neurological evidence demonstrates that perception and action are coupled in brain regions like the premotor cortex. Real-world tasks often require immediate responses that do not fit the stepwise input, processing, and output model proposed by classical cognitivism. The third idea that embodied cognition rejects from classical cognitivism is universality of cognitive processes. Classical cognitivism assumes that cognition operates according to universal, context-independent principles. It proposes that thinking, problem-solving, and decision-making are governed by the same abstract rules, regardless of physical or environmental contexts. Embodied cognition rejects that cognition is context-sensitive and shaped by specific bodily states, tasks, and environments. For example, studies on situated cognition demonstrate that problem-solving strategies vary depending on immediate environmental constraints. The reason why it rejects this is context-free models cannot account for how people use tools, adapt strategies, or solve problems in dynamic and unpredictable environments. Experiments in ecological psychology highlight that cognition is often about real-time interaction with the world rather than following abstract, universal rules. So why does embodied cognition even matter? The embodied cognition paradigm revolutionizes our understanding of the mind by emphasizing the role of the body, the environment, and the real-world interaction in cognitive processes. While classical cognitivism laid foundational insights into mental operations, embodied cognition offers a more holistic view that incorporates the complexities of being a living organism interacting dynamically with its surroundings. The shift had broad implications for fields like robotics, education, and artificial intelligence, encouraging the development of systems that better mimic human learning and adaptability. In conclusion, positron emission tomography, magnetic resonance imaging, and functional MRI all have their advantages and limitations, but they're good in their own aspects and can be used together to provide a comprehensive view of the brain structure and function. And there are many ideas that embodied cognition rejects from classical cognitivism, but it serves its own purpose. It helps us have insights in the complexities of being a living organism interacting dynamically with its surroundings. And knowing the mind like that helps us in fields like robotics, education, and AI, which helps us learn more about human learning and adaptability, and help us develop these things that will rule the future. Using these technologies, like PET, it is up to us to determine how we will shape the future. So it is important to know how each of these works and their advantages and their limitations. Thank you.